So how do you like stop yourself from overtrade? How many trades do you take a day on average?
Right. So this one is a tough answer because every day is a little bit different, right? And so, for example, on Friday, even though I only traded the first hour, that Friday I traded mostly shares, and I ended up taking, 5, 6, 7 trades, but they were all very small scalps, and that's on the very heavy side for me. 5, 6, 7 trades for me.
Yeah.
But this one, I was taking a lot of 2-minute patterns. The market was moving very nicely, and I was just in here, out there. So on a day like Friday, I felt like that was a lot, right? That was a lot, but they were all very small, and none of them were overly aggressive. On a day like today, I ended up taking 3 trades. I took a cost trade, a BA trade, and a the SPX trade. And for me, those 3 all had valid reasons for me to enter them. The cost one, I'm okay with how I took it. It was just a pattern failed. I got stopped out on the failure. And then I did wait a little bit too long to exit that one. I gave it more room than I should have, but it all worked out. And then the BA trade executed very well. Was super happy with that one. Wouldn't change anything. I would just change how the contracts moved. But that's not up to me. So the reason, and then the SPX one, again, I mentioned I probably was a good risk reward trade, but there was no reason to necessarily force myself into taking another one. I could have just been patient and called it a day. And so in terms of fighting over trading, I think there's this fine line, kind of goes back to what we talked about in the last one. There's a fine line between fighting the over trading and fighting the urge and the need to take too many trades versus capitalizing on the right opportunities, right? And so up until the end of last week, I would have told you that almost every day leading up to March was probably a good day for a one and done, right? Where if you find one good trade, take it and run, right? Every single trading day up until like last Tuesday, I would have told you that's the case, bar maybe 3 or 4 good ones in January, February, right? Where there was multiple good setups a day and follow through and all that. But most of this year up until last week has been, I think, one and done's been the right approach, right? So there's a fine line because you want to make sure that you're not over trading, but you want to be willing to execute on the right opportunities, right? And so some tips and tricks I have for fighting that urge to over trade, right, is one, when we talk about sitting on hands a lot, people say it as an expression, but I quite literally sit on my hands. So I literally go like this. No, I'm dead serious. So I sit and I watch the market a lot of the time like this, right? No, and I'm serious because just me doing this, me sitting on my literal hands, even though at any point I can just do it and go, obviously, but me sitting on my hands, it's like a mental thing for me because when I'm doing this and when I'm sitting here, it's kind of like, you really want to take that trade? Like, you sure? So if there's times where I'm where I'm still open-minded to taking another trade that day, but I don't think the conditions are right, I will literally sit on my hands. So there'll be stretches where I don't type, I don't do anything for like 5-10 minutes, and usually that's because I'm literally sitting on my hands and I can't type, right? But that happens to me, so I genuinely recommend the sitting on your hands thing. That I think is huge. The other thing for over trading, because the thing with it is that everybody can talk about like how like, oh, you need to just think about how there's 252 days in a year, all that, blah, blah, which is all true, right? You do need to just think about it, right? And it's at some level, it's just you changing you as in everybody. It's us changing the way that we think in the sense of saying that, recognize the 250 days, but that's what everyone says, right? Everyone just explains a different way to think about it. So one tip and trick that you can do, I think, is everybody should have a list of trading rules, right? That whether it be on a physical piece of paper, a document, whatever, I highly recommend that everyone has a literal document of trading rules, right? And I'm assuming most people will do already. The tip or trick I have would be, and you and I have talked about this specifically, is add a new piece of date to your daily routine that forces you to remember your trading rules, right? Like, so for me, I started to wear funky pants, and it really like put my trading to the next level. No, I mean, which sounds crazy, right? But every day that I wake up and actually put those pants on and sit down to trade, I am more consistent. I'm more disciplined. I'm more focused, right? Because I look at my pants and I remember, and it's a mental thing for me. The fact that I wake up and I do that every day, or the night before I pick the pants I'm going to wear, the fact that I do it every day, you're now more likely to have that be a habit, which means you're more likely to develop the habit of following your trading rules, right? Which that's what overtrading comes down to, is your trading rules, right? Because if you're taking good setup after good setup, it's not necessarily overtrading. You're just taking what the market's giving you and executing well, right? There are going to be days where you want to take 3 or 4 trades because there was 3 or 4 really good opportunities. But most other days, you're going to want to make sure that you follow your rules, which is that, hey, if the markets aren't great and I have one good trade, sit on my hands, lock my profit for the day, right? And for me, the pants thing is easy because I can change into sweatpants when I'm done, right? And like when I change into sweatpants or change into shorts, whatever different type of pants, it's like, okay, you're done, right? Like that's I can't take another trade, right? Like if I do, I'd be breaking my rules, and if I'm breaking my rules, something is sure to go wrong, right? So interestingly enough, I find it a little bit funny that today I'm sitting down and I'm looking at my pants as we're having this conversation. I didn't put on any funky pants. I kept my black pants on. I set ones, and so I ask myself, I didn't execute all that well on Boeing. My very first entry of the day, my very first one. I rushed it. I wonder if I rushed it because I wasn't following my rules, all that, right? Maybe that SPX trade I took later in the day, even though I mentally wasn't all there. Maybe it came down to the fact that it sounds so little and it sounds silly, but I cannot explain how helpful that has been to me. So my biggest piece of advice is have your daily rules, your trading rules, and then create a daily routine. And if you have one already, add one more layer to that daily routine, right? It could be as simple as listening to one song, 10 minutes before market open. And just by having that daily routine and having that new thing that you follow, you will naturally be more likely to follow your trading rules. And if you're following your trading rules, you shouldn't have a ton of problems with overtrading, right? If you're following your rules, right? I mean, if we're following our rules, it should be trading in general should be easy. The problem is it's not easy to follow your rules. I think that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me because I started to wear a hat, and it helped. Like, this is what we're doing today. We have that hat on, and the fact that I feel it on my head, I know that we need to behave today.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, we need to behave. So I know you shared that in the beginning you lost a lot of money. Like, what actually? And I think you said it was around 50K, right?
Yep, exactly.
I saw that. I was like, geez, I didn't lose that much.
Yeah, it's a big number. I'm not proud of it.
I was like, how did he mentally stay? Because you're a strong man. I respect you. I don't know if I've said this before, but I respect you a lot. And I know some traders out there, I'm not trying to shit anybody, give a lot of cliche like answers and stuff and tell you how they lost a lot or this, but they're not really open about how much they lost. But you said like, hey, I lost 50K. And how did you not how do you come back from that? How did you know that there's hope and we're gonna make that back?
It was so it was a lot, right? It was the money that I had saved, it was money that I had earned during internships and working throughout, college, right? And I over the course of a year essentially gave it all back, right? It's like essentially I just gave back most of the work that I did. Like I worked an internship my sophomore year of college that was really difficult, and it was like manual labor, field work all day, and I made I think I made over the course of the summer like $20,000, and then I remember having literally lost that in the span of a few weeks, right? And then over the course of the year, it becoming more closer. I think I want to say it was a little over 50 before I sort of stopped and took a break. But it was tough, right? Because that was most of the money that I had, right? I didn't really have a whole lot of money. So when I went back into it, I had to essentially do the challenge of a very small account when I could have set myself up, a lot easier. But mentally for me, I don't know what it is. I'm a little bit of a psychopath, I think, because as soon as I found out what trading was and how I could do it in the few days that I made money, I knew that I was never going to do anything else, right? I knew in my head, I was like, oh, this is it. This is my job. Like, I don't have to wake up. Like, I don't have to go to work. I can work from home. I can be myself. Like, I can do whatever. Like, no, this is it. And I knew this was going to happen.
Right.
I had seen other traders online, like Umar, right? I had seen him, how he was able to do it. And I was like, all right, if he's able to do it, I can do it, right? Like, if someone can do this out there, I can do it.
Right.
But so the thought of quitting, like, never really hit me, right? And it was never really part of me. But the thought that really struck me is just like, dude, if you're gonna do this, it's got to change, because I can't take these up and down emotional swings, right? Like, I can't take. Like, there was times before in college when I got started where, like, I didn't want to go out one night because, like, I had lost a couple $1,000s that day. Like, I was like, what the hell? Why do I don't want to go out and party with my friends? Like, I just want to sit here and wait for Monday morning so the market can be open again so I can try again, right? Like, that's literally all. And I was like, I never want to go back to that, right? Like, I never want to go back to that. And I think that, but I always knew that I had seen it be possible, and I had seen it even be possible in myself. I had seen myself make money, and even before I really, like, knew what I was watching on the charts, I, like, started to pick up little patterns and all that, and I was like, okay, there is stuff that I can recognize, and if I can recognize it, I can make money off it, right? Like, so, like, it always clicked to me, and I knew that I was going to get through and get there at some point. I just literally didn't know if it was going to take, 5 years, 10 years. Like, I legitimately at one point thought it was going to take 5 or 10 years before I became consistent.
Right.
And I thought that was strategy related, right? I thought it was like, I was just YouTube searching for different strategies. I had watched every YouTube video under the sun, even though I had taken 2 courses, right? I was still looking for YouTube videos. And the courses were good courses, but I was still looking for YouTube videos. I was still looking for stuff because I was convinced that my strategy, it was something up with my strategy, right? There was something like, if I can, and granted, I will say, ever since I found the strategy that I use now, the bar by bar book, I do think, I mean, obviously the charts make a lot more sense to me. I'm a way better technical trader than I ever was during any of those points. But even after I found the book, I still had very inconsistent stretches of big wins, but bigger losers. And but I had my strategy down, right? I had the working strategy that I was like, I was pulling my hair out because I was like, what is it? Like, my strategy works. Like, what is it? And eventually it kind of hit me in the face. I was like, dude, like, you got to read Trading in the Zone. Like, you got to take it seriously. Like, you got to really read the books. You got to put in the work. And now it felt like I was trying to convince myself, or I had convinced myself, that I was so good at technicals and I was so much better than all the other traders out there in the world that I could skip the psychology part, right? That I could skip it. And my technical skills were so good that it wouldn't matter, right? And then eventually I realized that your technical skills don't matter at all if you don't have the psychology, right? And so when I have conversations with some, I even have friends that I've been trading with for years now, and some of them are still, I have like hundreds of people I've been trading with for a few years now, but a couple in particular are still struggling, right? And they're still struggling. And I remember one person I had a conversation with, I'm like, well, this was like a year ago, we had a conversation. I was like, well, have you read Trading in the Zone yet? And they're like, no, I bought it, but I just haven't read it. I'm like, I want you to read that, then we'll talk, right? Yeah. They read a very small portion of the book. They got back into trading. They had some success. Then they blew their account again. They reached out to me, and they're like, I can't get it. I'm like, well, did you read Trading in the Zone? They're like, I started it, but I didn't finish it. I'm like, talk to me when you finish it. And like literally, the same conversation has happened 2 or 3 or 4 times now. And eventually they read it, and they're like, dude, this makes so much sense. I'm like, I'm like, yeah, it does. Like, you were as hard-headed, but like, I get it, because I was just that hard-headed, right? Where it's like, I thought I was better. So that's what I tell traders who don't focus on their psychology, is that you, in a roundabout way, are saying that you're better than every trader who's worked their butt off to remain disciplined and patient every day in and day out. You're essentially saying that the Umars of the world, the John Carters of the world, that you're better than them and you don't need to do the same things that they do to be patient and disciplined every day. It's like, no, you're not, right? The market will tell you, the market will prove to you, you're not better than anybody, right? Like if you want to be successful in this, if you want to be one of the greats, you have to manage your psychology. Everybody will tell you you have to manage your risk in order to survive. That's super true. But if you don't manage your psychology, then you'll never have any risk to manage because you'll run out of cash, right? You won't have any bullets left in the chamber. So I think above all else, and how I sort of recovered from that big loss was that I always knew I was going to make it as a trader eventually. I just didn't know. My thing was just like, how many side jobs do I need to get? How long do I need to work my job so I can get enough paychecks to keep funding my account? And then eventually I realized, like, all right, like you shouldn't do that. Like you should stop and figure out what's the problem, right? What's wrong? Like, and so it wasn't that I was like a degen or just like blowing it all, but I was just like, it was death by 1,000 cuts for like a year straight. It was like small loser, small loser, small loser, small loser. Couple of big winners, couple of big days, huge loser, right? And like it was a loop. So I got myself out of. That's where I came up with the phrase "the loop," right? Is because I was stuck in that loop where you. For those who don't know, sorry, just my last tangent, but for those who don't know, the loop. Loop, in my opinion, is when you take one good trade, you sell it because you look at the dollar value, you're happy with the profit, right? So you sell it, then you watch it continue to run without you. You watch it to keep making a move. And you realize that you only sold because you were watching the dollar value and you shouldn't have done it. So in your next trade, you put a little bit more size onto it, right? You're a little bit confident, a little bit cocky. And then when it starts to go against you, in your head, you sort of think, oh man, well, the last trade worked and kept going. This one will go. I just got to give it more room, right? I got to give it more room until it eventually hits a dollar amount that you're not okay losing. You sell. And just for a kicker, about half the time it reverses right when you sell, right?
Look,
you only sold at the right. You only sold. Yeah, at the time you only sold because you had just hit a dollar value that you were like, you're like, all right, I can't lose anymore. I can't lose any more than this $500. I got to sell. Even though the chart was saying no, hold. Give it another 10 minutes. Yeah. The play is still valid, but you can't think of that, right? Then so in your next trade, that's you go through the winner, you go through the loser, then you go back to a winner, but you're scared from the loser, so you sell early, right? You sell early again, you watch it run, and you're back in the loop, and it's this consistent loop of where you have to try to fight the urges and temptations of this can go more, this can go less, right? And so getting out of that loop is one of the hardest things to do in trading because it really genuinely requires time off. It requires time away from the screens usually, or whether it's a day, whether it's a week, it's different for every person. But most people don't have the discipline to take a few days off, right? Most people don't have, because they see an opportunity in the morning and they convince themselves that it's going to happen. Yeah. And they miss when they should just really just take the day off, right?
Yeah. And like time off from the market means don't even watch the market. Don't even look at social media because you'll be tempted. Because people be posting gains and then you look at the chart because this is how it happened to me. Like I'll say I'm taking time off, but I'll still watch it. I was like, let me just look at the news. And then I'll be like, I missed this day that I skipped. Like look at the opportunities. I would have taken this here. The next day I come back and I try to trade. It might go well, and then I know that at some point, the same mistake, I make it again, and I'm like, time off means time off. Don't watch anything. Just don't look at the market. Pretend it's not open, and
close your broker. Close, think, or swim.
Yeah.